And now we turn to Android basics and we continue our perambulation through the settings app. And this week it's all about display. Now, you might think, why do I really need to worry about display, especially if you are a totally blind talkback user? But there are definitely some settings in here that you will want to be cognizant of and might want to change. Warren, do you want to kick us off with this one?
It's interesting you mentioned mentioned the fact about, one may say, hey, I'm blind. Why do I really need a display? But in reality, though, the display is everything that the phone is. Without that display, no one can use that phone, right? The reason why people are able to use that phone is because of the display. And whether we're blind or not, a lot of things actually depend on that display. That reminds me of a story that I want to tell. I think it was back in 2004, and I was in Jacksonville, or was it in 2005? I was there in Jacksonville during an ACB convention. And so we had people from Sprint that came and were talking about phone. Back in those days, we're looking for accessible phones. It wasn't a commonplace if you're not using a Nokia phone running, talks and all of that. But then Sprint was showing this phone, and then there came another one from the Code Factory guys. It was from Spain, I remember, but it was a phone without any display. I felt the phone, and I was saying to myself, what if something happens and the speech is not going on? How am I going to be able to have someone help me with this? And so I'm glad that phone didn't take hold. Ed, do you remember what that phone was? I'm trying to remember the name of it. Was it Capital? I don't remember the name of the phone, but
No, and I know the one you mean. I can't remember it either. But yeah, I do. I
exactly.
do know the one you mean.
Yeah, and it just never took off. And of course, we need the display. And if you go into the display, whether you're blind or not, there's certain things here you can turn on. Maybe if you don't want your phone to be using the 120 hertz, for example, you could turn that feature off, and you could also turn on certain things off to improve your battery life and things like that. So display for us as blind people is not a useless thing. What do you guys have, or what do you guys think about displays? Are they necessary for us, or they're not necessary for us?
I think you need them for a couple of reasons. One, in case something goes wrong with the phone, and you need to be able to help someone fix it. If you somehow disabled your display and then something's crashed and you can't recover it to restore your display, then that's a problem. Other things as well. I know at one point the Kindle app wouldn't work on devices it didn't think uh, uh, had weren't displays. So I know one of the note taker manufacturers had an issue with that. I think they fixed it eventually, but some apps will require a display, or at least think they do, in order to work. So yeah, I think you do need a display, and I think it's good. Whether there should be some sort of hardware way to disable it, although no one's going to do that, obviously, because most people who buy the phone won't want to disable their displays. That might be one thing, but yeah, disabling the display entirely, I think, is a difficult thing to want to do if that's going to be permanent and won't, for instance, cease to persist after a restart if you get yourself into difficulty.
It's interesting you mentioned the Kindle app thing, because in reality, so that's my argument. When one uses the Kindle, you're looking at the book. And so the app is even clever enough, intelligent enough to realize that, hey, you don't have a display on here. I'm not going to be able to work, because when I am working, you ought to be looking at me. And so if you're having a device that doesn't have a display, I'm not intended for use with a device without a display. So in reality, it's a very good thing that we have displays. So whether we are blind or not, we need that. And also, you can go in here and change as to how long it takes your screen to time off, because by default, what is it, like 1 minute or 30 seconds? And that, especially if you're just a learner or someone who's just starting with your phone, the time it takes it to shut off the screen may not even allow you to do anything that you really want to get done. And so, the first thing in here, after setting up the phone, I think is to go in here and change that sleep time or that shutting off of the screen from that 30-second default to something that is more manageable. I think for mine, even me, who is used to my screen and all of that, I actually set mine to 5 minutes. In that way, I can turn off the screen when I wanted it to, rather than having it turning off on me or timing out on me within 30 seconds. So it's important that we know how to go about these things. And there are certain things in here like adaptive brightness. If you want to set your brightness down to 0% or something of that sort, you want to go in and turn off that adaptive brightness and just manually pull down your brightness down to 0%. That will help you with your battery management if you have a phone that's running out of battery quickly. And so we have a lot of usage for the display where we could take advantage of it in helping us with our battery and other things as well, animations. And we should not forget about some of our brethren, most especially those who can see a little bit and can use the screen magnification and all of that. In here, you could change things like fonts, you could change things like the color and all of that. So in our blind world, the screen is still a very useful tool to us. It's not something we could discount with the wave of a hand.
I think the other couple of settings worthy of a mention in display is it's one way to get to the rotation screen lock. So if you either do or don't want your screen to flit between portrait and landscape, then you'll find that control in display as well. And obviously, you can get to it other ways, but that's one way. I personally lock my phone in portrait. Not all apps respect it. Zoom doesn't, but it's very annoying when an app doesn't
It is
respect
very
your.
annoying, yes.
Yeah.
That's important. That's another thing that I do first after setting up my phone or getting to the home screen is to make sure I turn off that screen rotation. If there's an annoying thing, is that screen rotation. I don't need it. Of course, I know why some people may like it, especially sighted people watching videos and want to watch things in that landscape mode. Yeah, that makes sense. And of course, if you want to take a video or shoot videos or want to take a picture of people, large group, of course, you want to flip your phone into that landscape mode. But other than that, frankly, I don't see the need for me as a blind person or as an individual for having my screen rotating on me at will. I don't want that happening. It becomes annoying.
Yeah, I agree. And so that's in display. The other thing that's in display as well is the display refresh rate, which you might want to look at because it can have a battery impact. So a lot of the phones say that they might have 90 or 120 hertz refresh rates. If it's 120 phone, it probably isn't set to it by default. You probably have to go and change it. Um, it may be set on 60 now. You might not want to change it because it's a massive increaser of battery. So again, if you are finding that your battery is draining more quickly, go and see if your refresh rate is set to its lowest.
Very important. And of course, if the reason why we like these things is because, like I said, these things are made for the sighted world. We're always an afterthought. I'm sorry to say that, but the whole idea is that you want to see this beautiful looking screen with all that animation and all that. And so the higher the refresh rate, the better those things look. But if I'm not going to be using those things or not looking at those pretty babies on there or whatever the case may be, I probably want to leave mine at 60 hertz, and that's good enough. And of course, it kind of helps with not chewing up your battery as well. So if you're not going to be watching things that you want to take advantage of that refresh rate, I leave mine off. Even on my Pixel 6 Pro, that thing is turned off.
The best way to save battery on display is to turn it off using TalkBack. The hide display feature of TalkBack, that is the best battery saver. We'll cover it in detail when we cover accessibility.
You're talking about a good old dimming of the screen. Yes, that's
Yeah, the
another good
hide the
one.
screen. Yeah.
That's another good one, especially when we get to the accessibility, where one could even make things even better still with the talkback dimming of the screen.
That's right. And that's it for display settings.